sure we accommodate that in June as well. So with that, Clint, it's all you.
Sorry about that. Good evening, utility board members. My name is Clint Morris. I'm the capital division manager. And as Jason said, we wanted to give you a quick update of utility capital work with a more in-depth look at June. So please, if you see something tonight that you want us to talk more about in June, just let us know. So we have quite a challenging biennium ahead for the city's utilities, especially in water. Patrick, could you go to the next slide, please? The water system is receiving an enormous amount of improvements in what I feel are three major areas. First is the AMI metering project, which you're going to hear more about later tonight. And that's going to improve the water system at the point that we deliver it to the customer, which is right at their water meter. A second area of the water system is our annual water main improvement program, which we have expanded for this biennium. It's now larger than it ever has been. And the third area that's seeing an awful lot of work is what I call the heart and brain of our water system. It's the reservoir site. That's where we store the water. That's where it comes into us from the city of Seattle and goes out to the customers. So here's just a brief look at construction work that we have queued up for 2023. We have the SCADA water system replacement, that as well as the booster chlorination station. Those both started in the last biennium, and they've been carried forward due to complexity and some supply chain limitations. We've been waiting for equipment to arrive on the booster chlorination station for quite a while, but those are looking like they're going to be completed third quarter of this year. We're about to start the reservoir improvement project, which will coat the interior and exterior of both of the reservoirs, as well as do some other safety upgrades, such as getting rid of access ladders to get up onto the top of the reservoir tanks and replacing those with stairs and handrails. That project is going to go clear to the end of 2024 because we can only work on one reservoir at a time. So it's going to take the next 18 months to get that finished. We're also going to replace the backup generator at the reservoir station. It's currently in the building. It's going to move outside the building. It's an old unit. I believe that Alan has told me that they can't even get parts for it anymore. So that's going to be replaced with an outside unit, and that's going to free up some floor space in the pump station for some future equipment that's going to be installed, I think, in the next biennium. We also are going to start construction of the 2023 water improvement project, hopefully by May or June. The design on that is wrapping up now. And then the water meter replacement. Patrick, can you go to the next slide, please? So we also have a lot of water design work happening. Later this year, we're going to start on the 2024 water main replacement project. That's typically we've been focusing on replacing older pipes that have history of breaks, pipes that are undersized for the areas that they're now serving. But last year, you may recall that we introduced an expansion of that water main replacement program to also focus on replacing AC water mains. That's the asbestos cement pipe. Those are the oldest pipes we have in our system. Those are from the mid-1950s. And we rolled out a very aggressive program to try and retire all of those remaining AC water mains over the next 6 years. I believe it's about 5 miles. So that's 4,000 to 5,000 linear feet per year. And next year will be when we kind of officially start the AC water mains. We also have pressure reducing valve stations. We have a network of over 80 of those. We have evaluated the worst 20, and we're moving forward with designs to replace 5 of those. So as you see on the chart there, that design is underway. We also have a water booster pumping station up on First Hill. It also has an emergency generator that needs to be replaced, and we are underway designing that project. We also have a couple of smaller items there, the street-related water improvements, as well as doing some pump replacements at the water reservoir. Those are going to start later this year. Next slide, please, Patrick. So moving over to Capital Sewer, we have some great news with Capital Sewer. We have hired a new utilities engineer, and he is going to focus on working on capital sewer projects. This is a new position that was created with this biennium, and this is going to have a huge impact on the volume of sewer work that we can do. We have a project under construction now that I think is about nearing 50% completion. It's in Basin 40, which is our oldest sewer system on the island. And we are doing a series of cured in place pipeliners. That's a trenchless technology where we can insert a liner into those existing sewer mains and cure it in place. We're doing that in 2 phases. The second phase should be coming to construction here this fall. And we're also working on replacing SCADA equipment at the pump stations and their associated generator facilities. Design work that our new sewer engineer is taking on right now is replacement of 2 of our oldest pump station generators at stations 23 and 25. We're also working on a sewer pipe replacement in Basin 61. That's in the Mercer Dale area. So that's immediately south of the town center. We're doing some sewer system flow modeling, and we're also in the midst of assessing the network of sewer pump lift stations to determine which of those to replace first. Next slide. Stormwater, we're primarily in a design phase. We don't have much storm work going to construction this year. We have street-related storm drainage improvement. Some of that work's going to happen this summer in advance of 2023 street paving. We have that Basin 18C and that Basin 25B. That's some piped conveyance replacement work, and those designs are just getting started. We have a couple of watercourse projects that have been designed, but now we're awaiting permits from the Army Corps of Engineers as well as Fish and Wildlife so that we can work in those open channel waterways. And we have a final project there, Basin 46. That's in the Southeast 53rd Place open space area. And we hope to get design started on that late summer, early fall this year, so that we can hopefully construct those improvements in 2024. So I know that that's a lot of work that we went over pretty quickly, but if you had any questions about that, I would be happy to field them now if you want.
Clint, knowing the board, I am sure we will have questions. And I really appreciate your presentation. I think what might be the most efficient way of going about it, can we cycle back through your presentation, start at the first substantive slide, and then ask for
Sure.
questions as we, rather than kind of bounce around, because I'm sure different items caught different people's attention.
Sure. Patrick, could you reset us?
Great. No, this is, I like starting this one. Start with the big money, and we'll go from there. One question. You started your presentation by saying if people have things we'd like to focus on in June. One kind of overarching question I would ask is if when we talk in June, if we can have some kind of a handout or something that people can follow along with where all of these are.
Okay.
Particularly this one's not as tough, but particularly when we start talking about pump station 20 something and pump station 20 something else, it's unless you're into the weeds very much, it's difficult to keep track of where all those things are.
Sure. We can get some handouts for you that you can kind of know where we're talking about. And
exactly.
Yeah, this is a very, very long list. It's easy to get confused.
Yeah, right. So I'll open up. Any other questions from any other member of the board? I had one.
Just so I'm.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go
I'm just going to mention it. Since these ones are in the bulk of their cost phase, these are all the ones basically that we've been talking about for the last couple of years in terms of their various design and quote phases, right? So that's none of these ones were like surprise ones. These are all ones that have been in planning for the last few years. Just I guess for everybody's memory.
Correct. They've been in the works for quite some time, and we really try hard not to surprise the board or the council with any unexpected projects. But occasionally it happens. But yes, these ones have all been in the works for quite some time.
Yep. Yeah, I don't see anything particularly new there. Again, your overarching question, Clint, what do we discuss in more detail in June? The reservoir improvements, it would be good to have a feel for the time frame of what part is going when, and I appreciate very much your comment that only going to be working on one of the reservoirs at one of the tanks at a time. So it would be good to have so that the board has a good feel for how much of our reservoir capacity is going to be compromised at any given moment.
Okay, we should know more from the contractor by June with what his proposed construction schedule is.
Great.
I would like to note regarding the reservoir improvements, we were very careful in crafting the timing that we included in the project specifications to not allow the contractor to take down either one of the reservoirs during what we call the demand season. So about May through October. So throughout the other parts of the year, they are allowed to work on the inside of the tanks one at a time.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. Any other questions from anyone on the board about this slide in particular?
Yeah, Tim, I had one super quick one, because I'm newest to the board. Is there kind of a one sentence, I don't bother everybody else, summary of the 2023 water system improvements in this, First Hill, North Mercer Way, Southeast 37th Place, what those are?
Those are the locations. This project is generally going to be installing new 8-inch ductile iron water mains that will replace 4-inch and 6-inch water mains.
Thanks very much.
And as part of this, we also replace fire hydrants and install new water services to all the homes.
That was going to be my question, whether the hydrants get replaced.
And I would just add the water system improvements it's pretty much an ongoing program, just different locations that we do, and we try and design in year 1 and construct in year 2, based off of our water main identification through our water system plan, and it's rated, and so it's an ongoing program, but just different locations throughout the island, depending on the year.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from any of the board members about this slide? If not, why don't we move to the next one? I'll open it up to other members of the board. Any questions about this one? If not, I had one, and this might be premature, but to the degree that we're replacing asbestos cement piping, is there asbestos abatement that goes along with that, or does the asbestos remain encapsulated in the pipe?
We abandoned those old water mains in place.
So we're not pulling them out. Got it.
Correct. We're not bringing any of that material out of the ground. We abandoned all of the main. We abandoned the old water service lines, and we leave those in place. The challenge as our infrastructure grows and ages is always finding a route down the street where we can avoid all the other underground utilities and run a new water main or maybe a new storm line, and clear all of the power, gas, phone, TV, water, sewer.
Right.
I assume that method also allows you to kind of parallel the old system. That otherwise, if you can't really dig up an existing system without it and go around it at the same time, right? So
That's
building
correct.
the new one, then you can switch
That's
over.
correct. We have to
one
lay
shot.
the new pipe and then put it into service so that we can switch people off of the old water main, switch them to the new water main. Then we abandon all of that old stuff.
So it minimizes disruption for everyone
Yes,
at the cost of having to path new conduit.
correct.
Great. Any other questions for anybody from the board? If not, how about the next one? This one, Clint, just a question. Maybe I'm confused about something. Third column, 2023 project status, complete in Q4 for the Basin 40 work. But if it's complete in Q4 2023, why is there $1 million in 2024?
I don't know where we're going in 2024 yet. We will do another pipelining project in 2024, but currently we're involved in the Basin 40.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
I apologize. That was a little confusing. I didn't quite know how to convey that information compactly.
So my question is, I mean, I'm inferring that these things that say like Basin 40 CIPP, that these basin numbers are geographic areas in the system that mean something to you guys, or their stuff. Is that accurate?
That's correct. I guess what I should have done here was put Mercer Wood in parentheses, if you're familiar with the Mercer Wood neighborhood. So
Right,
Basin 40 starts basically at the swimming pool and works its way down Mercerwood Drive to Mercerwood Shore Club. So it encompasses kind of that whole area east of the high school that drops down over the hill to the lake. Again,
And
that's one of the oldest parts of our sewer system.
And Clint, is a basin a subset, an area that is a sewer type of term? I mean, I'm just trying to.
That's correct. we divide the sewer system into basins, and those are, that's all gravity flow down into one or two points of entry into the lake line sewer. So think of it kind of like a drainage basin except it's for sanitary sewer instead of rainwater.
Right.
I wonder
how
if
many-
maybe in June we could bring you a map of the sewer drainage basins and pump stations, just so you could kind of understand that we have a numbering system that makes sense to us, but obviously it would not make a lot of sense to you unless you could see it on a map.
I would love that.
That's why I was asking for a map. I think maps are just fantastically useful for many, many things.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Meredith, I don't think any of the rest of us, other than the staff, memorize the basin positions either.
Nope, absolutely not.
Well, and it's even just understanding, like I said, I can kind of infer from basin what it means, so I appreciate the explanation.
And I'll just ask, Clint, this is either to you or is to Jason. I mean, when we go through our discussion in June, will we include a update on where we are on the progress on the SCADA system?
We certainly can.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big chunk of what we're spending a whole lot of money on, so it'd be good to know where we are.
We can certainly do that.
Thank you. Steven.
Yeah, I have a question. I was discussing this with Jason before we went live, and it's related to the missing middle bill that's making its way through the Senate and looks likely to pass. And I know that you have pretty good modeling of the water system and parts of the sewer system. And if you've done an analysis of where the breaking point is, if you turn up the gain and increase the water by 10% or 20% or 30%, where things start to break down.
Steven, could you give the rest of us a little bit more background in your question when you say the missing middle? What do you mean?
So it's the House Bill 1110 that's going to basically up zone by making all the lots either duplex or fourplex, effectively increasing density. And the fear was that our infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, and so on, can't basically support that. So I'm curious if there's been any modeling done to see what we can support and what the limitations are.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think at the last utility board meeting, I said that we were working with our modeler to get that work underway. On the sewer side, we have a contract in place now. The modeler is beginning that work. We don't have the results yet, but I saw an email last week while I was out of the office, and so I know work is underway on that. We will certainly do that with the water side as well. On the sewer side, the latest general sewer plan that was adopted, the modeling that was complete was in the town center area. We didn't expand the modeling beyond that town center area. So we're focusing there first and foremost. Obviously, as the legislation works its way through the House and the Senate, and it gets concluded or adopted, then we'll expand accordingly. But we do have our modeler on board. They're starting to do some of that work on the sewer side. We'll certainly do it on the water side as well. And so more to come, and we'll report back to the board what those results look like once we have them in our hands.
Thank you.
I believe it was announced today that it passed the Senate as well, right?
Yes.
Yep, it's coming. Any other questions arising out of this page of the presentation? If not, can we go to the next one, please? Thank you. Any questions from any members of the board for Clint about this page of his presentation? Hearing none, I think we only have one more. Any questions about this page? I do, Clint. What do we mean? What's different than when it says as to, for example, Basin 18C drainage improvement as opposed to 25B neighborhood drainage improvement? What difference what are you trying to convey there?
That might just be some semantics.
Oh, okay.
I think they're essentially the same. It's what we're doing is in 18C, we're improving an existing old conveyance pipe. I think in 25B, that might be a few new pipes and new catch basins to fix some historic drainage problems.
Great.
But generally, those are both pipe projects.
Hope I didn't sound overly picky. So
And Clint, when it says the first one, street-related storm drainage improvements, are those different drainage improvements than the other two? Is that stormwater drainage different than the other two drainages?
The street-related storm drainage improvements, that's an annual program that we've developed that years ago to help us fix some drainage problems that might be on streets that we're about to overlay. With paving streets, you've got to have good drainage, and usually in any given neighborhood, you could always use a couple more drains someplace, or maybe there's a pipe that has some damage that we need to fix. So we created this program to address those little minor improvements that are here and there in a neighborhood that we'd like to go in and dig up the streets and fix those things before we pave it, so that we get a better life out of the street.
Right, and so really what that is a subset of streets that are going to be repaved, as opposed to the other drainage improvements are being looked at for other reasons.
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
any other
And
questions?
it's like an opportunistic budget in that sense. You're just kind of, as opposed to the bigger projects which are planned more in advance, you're just fixing things as you find them in advance of the paving.
Correct. We do a TV program. We'll look at the neighborhood that we're about to do repaving in. We'll TV those storm drains. There are usually some things that are worth digging up to fix. There's usually a couple of catch basins and a couple pipes we want to add to the system. So the $100,000 is kind of a typical number. It doesn't mean that we spend that every year, but that's enough to allow us to go in and fix those things ahead of the paving.
Okay, and I have one other question. Again, I think this is because I'm relatively new. What is watercourse stabilization?
That's an open channel conveyance. So Mercer Island has very interesting stormwater drainage. It starts at the top of the island, of course, and it runs through pipes or open channels on its way down to Lake Washington. Some of these open water courses are in city parks or city green space. An awful lot of them are on private property. Some of them, the city has an easement. Some of them we don't. But for the sake of erosion control and water quality, we've been monitoring a lot of these water courses, and we did a basin plan a number of years ago that identified different water courses that could benefit from some stabilization, some erosion control, some for that lack of a better term, they need a little bit of love. They've been neglected. They're heavily eroded. So these are, we're kind of reaching the tail end of like a 15-year process of doing these water courses. And the big high flow, heavily damaged ones, those are mostly done. Now we're down to the smaller ones. And I don't remember where 2022 and 25 are. I know that the 46 water course is down through the Southeast 53rd place open space. And that's a big tract. It goes from Island Crest all the way down to East Mercer Way.
That's a great hike. Do that multiple times a week.
All right, thank you. I just, so I don't know that I appreciated that some of the stormwater stuff was an open water channel, which makes perfect sense. I just
Yes.
hadn't realized that.
Great. Any other questions about this slide? If not, I think that was it, right? Any other questions from any members of the board for Mr. Morris? If not, Clint, thank you very much. It was very helpful to have this kind of intro. We're looking forward to an in-depth discussion come June.
Well, you're very welcome. It was my pleasure.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Clint. Yeah, so.
All right, the next item on our regular agenda is a water meter replacement project update. I assume that is Director Kentner or one of your folks.
It is the long-awaited meter replacement project is hitting the streets, and so Elaine Summergren, our Deputy Public Works Director, is going to take this one, and I'll turn the floor over to her.
Good evening, Utility Board. Elaine Summergren, Deputy Public Works Director on the operations side of the house. I am going to give you a brief presentation about where we are on the AMI project. I know the first part of this is going to be repetitive for many of you who have seen this project over many, many years in its development. It's pretty exciting now that we are getting ready to actually start implementation on the ground. So I'm happy to take questions as we go along. Also, Alan Hunter is here, our utilities operations manager, who can speak to a lot of the details. So please feel free to ask questions as we go. And I will go ahead and share my screen. Assume everyone can see that okay. Wonderful. Okay, so just a little bit of history. Why are we doing this? Many of you are familiar with these statistics, but why are we replacing our meters? The basic answer here is because a lot of them are quite old. About 64% of them are more than 15% or 15 years old. And as these meters age, they tend to under measure water use. Like it says here, 82% of our meters are currently read manually, which obviously is maybe not the best use of staff time. We also see a lot of water loss from leaks in these old meters. There is lead in some of these meters, and so this is really just able to eliminate that source. And then also, of course, standardizing our meters across the entire city. Right now, we have a giant hodgepodge of meters of different ages and styles. And so this is really just standardizing our system, which will help with operations tremendously. So just the basics of AMI. So this is a little schematic here that shows that the data on the water usage is collected right at the meter, and then it is actually sent via signal to a data collector, which is mounted on a tall pole somewhere on the island. We can talk about that a little bit more. The city receives those signals multiple times a day, and we're able to look at that water use really in real time. And then what that also allows is that the customers are able to access information about their water use much more frequently than just looking at a bill. They can actually do it through a portal connected from the city's website, where they can learn all sorts of information about their water use and trends over time, and also receive notifications. So like I said here, this really helps the city with monitoring and managing water demand over time. One of the really big benefits here is about conservation goals. So leak detection is huge, right? This may take a much longer right now with the current system, but we'll really be able to gain information about potential leaks much earlier and be able to investigate those. Again, that real-time information for customer service. So this is our customer service team. They may get a call from a customer asking a question about, about their meter, about their water usage. And that is something that our staff can actually look up and see what's going on. So this really helps with our customer service. And then, customers being able to receive notifications directly and in a timely fashion through the portal. A little bit of background on how we got here. As many of you know, we started this way back, started to look far before I was involved in it in 2018, looking at the existing metering program and really trying to figure out what the best system for the island was. In 2019, a request for proposals went out. Ferguson Enterprises was chosen at that time. And since that time, we've been working, developing a scope of work, developing a lot more of the details about how this system would be set up, the exact equipment, all of that. Between 2019 and 2022, obviously we had a pandemic in there and that made timing a little funky, but during that time, the propagation study was also conducted. So really looking at where it made sense to put those data collection base stations around the island. And we were in contract negotiations with Ferguson for the contract for deployment of all of these new meters on the island. Then we came to the utility board, I believe it was last April was the last time we gave an update on this project. So we hadn't yet gone to council. In July, we did go to council and were able to award that bid to Ferguson, get a budget appropriation because we were able to know a lot more about what would be required to get this deployment happening and completed. Basically right away, Ferguson started on equipment procurement. The supply chain issues that we've seen across, all infrastructure problems, projects, this is not a problem that's unique to them. That also is affecting this project. So there's a little bit of a longer lead time on some of these items. And then in December, we actually brought on 2 new LTE staff that were specifically going to be focused on meter box prep. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then we had 1 LTE from our existing staff hired to be an inspector for this project, really doing quality control. As you might imagine, a project this large has a lot of different elements that are happening concurrently, a lot of overlap. But we're trying to keep all those balls in the air at one time. I wanted to highlight some of those here just so you understand what those are. Looking at pole installation and the power drops to those poles, and this is where those base stations will be located. Some of it is replacing existing poles with taller ones so that we can really get that signal strength across the island. Mounting those base stations on the poles. So that's at 7 different locations around the island. The meter box preparation, I just talked about the staff that was hired to do this. They're cleaning out those meter boxes, those 7,800 meter boxes around the island, replacing the boxes or the lids if needed. The new meters are a slightly different configuration. And so some of this requires our staff to reset meters at a different height, but a lot of it really is like pruning back vegetation and cleaning those out where they've really accumulated a lot of debris over many, many years. Obviously meter replacement, which will be coming up later this year. Software integration. So we have these signals now that are going to be coming into the city. We need to make sure that's working with our utility billing software. Setting up the customer portal and getting staff really up to date on it. And then, of course, public outreach, which we're going to talk about pretty extensively. And I know we're very interested in getting feedback from the board on this evening, because that's a really vital component of this project and what staff is doing. We're not doing this alone, obviously. We're working with several different consultants and contractors on this. Foremost is HDR Engineering. They are our project management consultant. They're working with us on a lot of different aspects of this project, coordinating with tons of different city staff across disciplines to make sure we're really keeping everyone up to date on where we are with this project, getting help when we need it. And then really helping also with our customer communications. So, coming up with plans and really deploying those different, mailings and outreach opportunities. Like I said, we're working primarily with Ferguson Enterprises, but they obviously are working with some other folks also. We are using census meters. As many of you know, that's the actual meter manufacturer that we're using for this system. They're in use across the country pretty extensively. And then Pedal Valves is the subcontractor who's actually doing the meter installations. So they're working really closely with Ferguson and with city staff on those meter installations. We're working with PSE pretty extensively because we do need to mount base stations on some of their poles. This is not a quick process. This is a really long application process for us. And so we're really just trying to keep that moving forward. And then we're working with our utility billing software, Enhance, and just a lot of communication with them about how we get this working seamlessly once those meters start actually sending out information to the city. I will note on the project budget here, I've brought up a spreadsheet, which is the one that was presented to council at the July meeting last year. This is different than the information that you saw in Clint's presentation just now, and I want to note why. His presentation noted that the project had only 3.2 million this year, when in fact it has much more than that. We just needed to carry forward about 4 million from last biennium. So this is just because the project implementation got pushed back just a little bit. So this is where we landed on the actual deployment costs. And the original estimate for the cost of this program didn't include things like project management. It didn't include extra staff that were needed for all of this meter box preparation. So there were a few things in there, and then also including the 15% contingency. So the budget, the bottom line of this project did go up significantly, but we feel that this is a really nice conservative estimate or more than an estimate of what this project is ultimately going to cost. With the current costs of meters and base stations. So on to public outreach. So one of the things that HDR has been working with staff on is really coming up with a comprehensive communications plan, because this really affects everyone on the island. We need to make sure that we are getting out information to everyone as effectively as possible, using different methods, using different languages, really just trying to reach everyone in whatever way they are best reached. We want this to be proactive wherever it can be, right? Like really getting out in front of this so people aren't surprised, they aren't shocked when they get a door hanger that starts to tell them about this project, right? We want people to see this coming. And so we've really been working with them a lot on that communications plan and feel like it's in a good place right now. It certainly will be adjusted over time as we figure out what works better. And this is a longer project, so we're able to tweak it as we go. I want to talk about a few of those ways that we're reaching out to customers. You see here on the right, I took a little screenshot of the postcard, part of the postcard that's about to go out to every single water utility customer. So we'll be sending these out to about, I think it's 7,600 different addresses within the next week or so. And this is just an introduction to what the project is. What are the goals of the project? What are the benefits to customers? It also provides them with a web address for our Let's Talk project page for this. And what that is that's going to be the city's main platform for conveying information to the public about the latest updates on where we are, project progress, you know, and also, you know, frequently asked questions, maps, everything that really we think that people want to know. And it's also a forum for people to be able to ask questions of staff and that we can actually talk back with and forth with them. And I would encourage you all to take a look at this Let's Talk site. It is live. It's not, you know, fully built out because that's going to happen over time, but it is a landing page for the project. We have a pretty extensive FAQ section on there right now and ways to contact the city. One of the other ways that we're going to do this is we're going to be adding some information onto actual utility bills that get sent out right now. So we have a little place where we can put in a certain number of characters on, and again, that will point to this Let's Talk page. So we're really trying to direct people here as much as possible. There's information going out on city channels. Obviously, you may have seen things if you subscribe to the MI Weekly. We've started to push out some information there, and then it will start to appear on social media, on our, you know, various channels, Facebook, Instagram, just really trying to get the word out. We've started talking about event tabling, so where we can actually get out and just talk to the public about this. One of the things that's coming up is the Leap for Green event later this April, and then at Summer Celebration. You know, we're certainly going to look for other opportunities to just interface in a way that people can just casually ask us questions, which I think is a really good way to, you know, keep things from escalating or fears about what this project means, right? Is really just be able to have conversations with people about, you know, all the benefits that this has to customers. And then our customer service team, which is really the front line for the city of any phone calls that come in, right? So a lot of our city numbers are redirected to our customer service team. We've made sure that they've been involved in this project from the ground. So really understanding, you know, what are the questions that are likely to come up, and then being able to go back and forth with them on if there's a question that they're getting a few times, adding it to our FAQs. So we make sure that we're being responsive to, you know, concerns that arise or holes that maybe get poked in our public outreach where we recognize, oh, we need to do a little bit more in that category. So they're fantastic, and they also are in constant communication with city staff about this project. In terms of targeted notifications, I just want to touch on a few of these, and this may change just slightly, but this is what we're looking at right now, which is that we'll be doing door hangers and postcards to folks who are on our 2-week horizon for installations. So the installations will be happening, those meter replacements will be happening in tandem with our utility billing. So basically our utility billing is done on a book basis, right? A suite of addresses that are all billed in one chunk. And so we're really going to be doing deployment in conjunction with them. So we make sure we're not kind of screwing up their reading schedule, right? So we already have an idea of what order we're going to be doing these addresses. So we can get postcards and door hangers out to all these addresses saying, hey, heads up, we're going to be doing this in the next 2 weeks. If you have questions, here's how to reach us. And then when we have the installers on site, they'll try to make direct contact with folks who might be home during the installation to make sure they know that the water's going to be shut off for approximately 30 minutes. And then a door hanger to let them know that work is complete, right? Because people want to know, did you actually hit my address or didn't you? So really, we want to make sure that people, you know, they aren't left in the dark about where they are in the process. So where are we on project implementation right now? So I want to give you just some quick bullet points on this. like I said, meter box preparation is the thing right now. That is what on the city side, particularly, we are really focused on right now. I am very excited to say that Alan updated me with some numbers today. It sounds like, Alan, I don't have the number in front of me. I believe it's 2,600 meter boxes have already been cleaned and prepped, which is pretty good. Yeah, so in the grand scheme of these 7,800 that we're looking at replacing, they've made some really good headway on getting ahead of those installers. We don't want to be slowing them down. We want them to be able to get to a meter box and do their work quickly without us needing to do any additional work. Like I said, equipment procurement is underway. I know that shipments of both base stations and meters are sort of constantly coming into our supplier. So we're tracking that pretty closely. We're working on these pole installations as we speak, working with Ferguson and their electrician on getting those all set up so that we can get those first 3 base stations established as quickly as possible. I left it out of this PowerPoint, but at the last update, we noted that the 3 first base stations that go in will actually cover 75% of the meters on the island. So while we have 4 others, which are more involved with PSE installations, those cover far fewer addresses on the island of those meters. So, being able to get these first 3 base stations up is going to be really big in terms of starting to really turn this system on once those meters start to go in. So, like I said, we're working with our utility billing software provider, preparing for that integration. We're starting to work with the installers on standard operating procedures. So making sure we're all on the same page about what we expect in terms of customer service and coordination with our operations teams, and then working with PSE on pole installations. The next things up, I said installations on power poles. We are anticipating right now that meter installations will begin in mid-July. That may get scooted a little bit either way, but that is sort of the date we're honed in on right now and really working around. So that's exciting to start to see that on the horizon in a few months. Ferguson will be working on setting up that customer portal soon so that we can start to tweak what that looks like and make sure that it really works well for our customers. And we are looking at an expected project completion at the end of 2024. And that's also right on the horizon. So we're excited about bringing this project to a close and seeing it in action. With that, I will gladly stop sharing and take any questions you have.
Steve.
Yeah, so just when you were going through the comms plan, you had mentioned being able to add some information onto the bills. I was just curious, is that going to go out in both the snail mail, postal bills as well as the emailed billing systems, or how does that exactly work?
So that's a great question. So yes, it will be added to any bills, whether they're hard copies or if they're emailed copies. The other things that we've talked about is with the direct mailings going out to all of the customers, but then we also have some folks who aren't customers, maybe they're owners of properties that are being rented. They may not be the ones who are actually receiving the utility bills, but we also still have ways to contact them, usually via email. And so we'll actually be pushing out our communications to those addresses also. So we're really trying to cover all the bases, right? There's a lot of complexity around, it's not just 1 meter, 1 house, one person, 1 family. So we want to make sure we're covering those apartment complexes, rental properties, commercial properties. So
Great. Well, William, I saw you next.
Yeah, thanks. Is this a mandatory upgrade? I mean, I support it, but if people want to opt out, is that even an option for them to do?
we are not allowing an opt-out
Okay.
on this program.
Okay, great.
So this will be every meter on the island.
Got it. Thank you.
Steven.
Elaine, just an observation, but my understanding is that the old meters presently are under-reporting usage, and the upgrade will actually increase a lot of people's bills a little bit by accurately reporting the usage. So I think that needs to be part of the communications plan, that
Yes.
to forthrightly say that your bills may go up, but we're not cheating you.
Right, and we have addressed that in the frequently asked questions, because that we do know that will presumably come up, right? You know, the good news is you haven't been paying as much up until now, but now, you know, really this is going to be accounting for all of the actual water use.
I think there'll be some suspicion on that, but
Yeah.
Meredith.
How,
I'm sorry, William. Do you have a follow-up?
yeah, just any idea how much, like 10%, 20%, based on, I don't know if your designer or your contractor can say what to expect.
I wouldn't want to hazard a guess on that,
Okay.
Alan. Jason,
Right.
I don't know if you have any other.
No, we don't have an estimate on what the
All right.
volume difference will be, but we certainly know every utility that's done this has fielded these phone calls. We know it'll happen. We're prepared for it. Our customer service team is prepared for it. There were suspicions to board member Majewski's concern. We're fully aware of that and prepared for it as well.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Can I add, that'll be the benefit to the customer portal, because the homeowner will actually be able to see when they are actually using their water, at what time of the day or night and so forth, and when they're seeing the increase. So that'll be a benefit to that customer portal.
Great. Thank you. Meredith.
Yeah, and you may have answered my question again, because I've come late to all of this. Is there any thought that either the cost of the capital project will actually ultimately end up being covered or paid back by more accurate water billing? I would think not, if you're thinking that it's not, you know, I mean, 10% or 20% or something obviously isn't going to pay back the whole thing. And then my other point I wanted to make, and you guys might be way ahead of me on this, if it were me doing this, I would make sure that I would have something specific on the water bill itself that said, you know, you might see an increase, but it's only because it's been under measured previously. And this will, I mean, right there, I think going to a website and facts and all of that stuff are great, but it'll be when people see it on their water bill that you're going to get a lot of reaction.
Yeah,
Steve, do you mind if I just a comment about, Steve will remember, we have been talking about this project for about 10 years. It went back well before your timeline, Elaine.
Yeah.
And I recall early on when there was a discussion about this issue about why it is, I should say, that the meters underreport the usage. One of the engineering folks had a really useful model which showed the mechanism by which it is that the old style meters are recording water. And ever since then, it's just been obvious to me why it is that the old style meters are under recording. And if there's some way of duplicating that, getting a video to that same effect on your page, it really does kind of answer the question that it's just the technology that is built into that old system that leads to this inherent thing that as they age, they are just capturing less of the flow.
Right.
yeah, I'd love to see that too.
Yeah.
It was
No, I will
tremendous.
certainly look that.
And some of you know that I'm one of the more suspicious people about how much we raise rates, and I will tell you ever since that presentation that it's just not an issue. It's just not an issue.
And if I may just add to that too, to board member Larry's question. So although the increased revenue from more accurate meter reading will not pay for the meters themselves, they will certainly help with revenue forecasts downstream and future capital reinvestment in the utility. So it will help downstream as well.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, so just just making sure, yeah, everyone caught that it was the oldest meters are the least accurate, or the ones that are most likely to be inaccurate. So a lot of people may not see really any significant change,
Right.
but in that, like, whatever, 36% of the meters are relatively recent in comparison. So, and then as a question, I guess, was on the what the timeline you're expecting for the PSE pole permits. You mentioned it was a relatively small percentage of the meters that were covered by kind of those other pole attachments, but just curious how long those are expected to take.
That is it's a hard question to answer right now. There's just a certain amount of lead time that they tell you to expect, and I think it's on the order of something like 260 days. We have executed a master license agreement with them so that we just need to go into the specific sites. So we are on our way now. I would expect that none of those poles are going to go in probably until a year from now, if I had to hazard a guess. So yeah.
So, but they'll occur basically for the end of the meter replacements in that sense. So they're kind of in line with the overall project.
Yeah, no, and that's, I don't see them delaying, any part of this project. The other thing is that, having these meters in, and not having base stations able to read the data from them does not mean that we can't collect the data from them. We just go back to an old school method of it, right? Which is essentially what we're doing now. And I think a good example of this is the fact that, and Alan could probably speak to this more specifically, but for at least a year, several years now, we've been replacing with these more updated meters, but we don't have the technology to pull the data from them wirelessly. And so those are just read like the other meters. So those obviously won't be replaced if they're very new, but I think it'll be a really similar process. So say that a book or a bank of those meters is replaced, and they would be attached to a base station that is not yet up. Those just will be continued to read in the other fashion. So.
And then I did have one last, just I guess, comment on the the amount of underbilling for water. I know you didn't necessarily know what any individual customer's bill is going to look like, but doesn't the utility have right now a differential between what the water utility is billing customers and what we're being billed by SPU? So you know kind of what the breakage is in the overall system?
Yes, and I actually would love it if Alan could address that, because I think that's a really good point about just water conservation in general, also because of the regulations that bind us. Alan, do you want to speak to that?
I know it's more than just the undercounting at the meters, because there's also leaks in the water main part of the system right before it gets to the customer meter, but just overall of what is that general breakage number?
Yeah, so our the last for the 2021 water use efficiency report that we have to submit every year, we were just under 15% water loss for that, and overall over a 3-year period it was just a little over 12%. And that accounts for not only what the accuracy of the meters and what we're not capturing the meters, and of course water leaks, also unaccounted for water where there could be anywhere from people using hydrants that haven't been reported to we also try to capture water main breaks and try to estimate how much loss on water main breaks and so forth like that. So there's a lot of factors to it besides just leaks and what's going through the meters.
And Alan,
but I think that 15% is useful for people to have as a baseline of that's it may be averages around that to some degree, or it'll maybe average around more like a 10 or 12% across the system because of the other uses, but that gives you a better scale. We're not talking 50% undercounting typically, or a much larger percentage. Generally should be in that 10, 15.
I think it'll be really interesting for us to see what that water use efficiency is, right, after this project has been completed and we've been able to look at that data over some time, because that, you know, a lot of that will be attributable to this program. And you know,
Alan, if you could remind the board what the 3-year average number needs to be under on average,
10%.
10%.
right.
Okay. Other questions, comments, feedback?
We'll just so it needs to be under, that's under regulation from the state or federal or
The state.
county?
State. That's a state.
State, okay.
So state requires your water system to be under 10%, and they feel that that is a tight system or close to a tight system. Anything
Right.
above that, then, you know, your system is starting to break down where you'll have, you know, your water meters are not reading correctly, or you may have sufficient leaks or other factors in there in your system.
So
That's part of what the overall goal of the AMI replacements, et cetera, is getting us into compliance with that general guideline under 10%.
Right. That's really what led your city staff team to move towards this meter replacement and expedite it. What, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 6 years ago now, because our 3-year average at that time exceeded the 10% as well. And so I will say the numbers that Alan just reported for last year are pretty high in my time, in my tenure as the public works director for the city. So we certainly need
And forgive me for asking, what's the consequences for not being within that 10%? Is it, I mean, being out of compliance, is there a financial consequence? Is it that the state audits you more somehow or?
so twofold, so multiple ways, and you hit on both of them. One is we're out of compliance with the state, so we have to take necessary actions to correct that. But then, yes, there is a financial cost to it as well, because we're dependent upon purchasing our water from Seattle Public Utilities, and so we're paying for that water that's essentially being lost as well. And so it's something that we certainly need to get under control.
And it's paid for in the rates that we currently set within the utility. So
Right.
long term, increasing that efficiency, even though it may bump up a bill in a short term, it does actually reduce increases in the bill going forward.
Correct.
Right, but
Because you're not charging for that lost water. Yeah.
right, and I wasn't very precise, but I actually was wondering whether there were like state imposed penalties as well. I understand there are other financial.
If we weren't taking the necessary actions, then there could be additional consequences, but we're following the necessary steps to make sure that we're in compliance.
And so just to add to that, this is the 2021 water use efficiency report that we're going off of. So when we reported that, you know, we had to add to that what we were doing to make these corrections. Of course, replacing the water meters, main replacements, always part of that. You know, getting rid of our older main, and of course, increasing our leak detection program to spot these areas that need to be repaired.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All right, hearing none, I'll call this to a close and express my extreme appreciation for both Elaine and Alan and Jason. Great presentation. This is a big project, and I think the board needs to be kept abreast of this, and I really appreciates your efforts to keep us abreast of this. So thank you very much.
Yep,
Yeah,
thank
agreed.
you.
Thank you.
Other business, we do not have a meeting scheduled in May. Jason, I know when we talked about the work plan last session, there was a discussion whether we think we would need a meeting in May. I take it from the way the agenda is phrased, you don't think that's necessary.
Nope, I think our next meeting is scheduled for June 13th, if I'm not mistaken. We have board elections and then a follow-up for the CIP preview that you saw this evening. So we certainly have those notes from this evening, and we'll make sure that we highlight a few more projects and hunker down on a few things that you identified this evening as well.
Very good. Thank you. Any other matters for the good of the order? If hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion, hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thanks, everybody. Productive meeting. Have a nice
Yeah.
evening, and we'll see you in June.
All right, thanks all.
Bye now.
All right, thanks, everyone. That was a good meeting.
Bye.